Welcome back. We've now completed our portion in forms and documents, and we are going to head over to the signing, which will take us to a whole nother element of Transaction Desk. And the reason I say that is because if you do need to go back and make some changes on the forms, you'll need to delete them from Authentisign, go back to Transaction Desk, make any changes, and then pull them back into the Authentisign. So we'll go ahead and share what we're up to here. And so you've completed the forms, you've gone through the wizard all the way to the end, and now you are going to go to signings. And we don't have any yet. So we're going to go up here and click add. And this is going to be Joe Schmo agreement. Or we can put the buyer and seller agreement. But we'll just go with that for now. I like to put the last name and the first name, or the last names of both the buyers and sellers, and then agreement. I like to move forward with agreement. Okay, well, moving right along. We've got the agreement. Now be careful of this one unless you need to have somebody sign it first, because this will hold things up. So by default, it should be Samuel sign. Advanced options, I don't like to set an expiration date or reminders. I just leave all of this alone. If you want more details on that, take this training, which I recommend anyways. This is just a brief overview. Here we're going to go to participants. And I don't think that the buyer broker needs to sign anything on this. If you have the 22J, that's typically needed. Well, that is needed to be signed by the buyer broker, but I don't think there's anything here. And we're not including the sellers yet. This is only Joe's signing. So we're going to include him as the remote signer, and we will add him in to the mix. And now we're going to go to documents. This is going to show all of the ones that are available, and we're just going to click the ones that we want a part of this transaction. So form 21, 22A, AD, D. We're not having the FERPTA form. You'll see later that's going to actually be a document that the helpful listing broker provided. And the 22EF, we did that. 22K, again, that's not the form we're using. That's going to be the document that was already filled out. And escalation. We're going to include the wire alert. Just think that's good practice. Buyer advisor in a seller's market, always recommend that because we're going in with the escalation. Law of real estate agency, of course, if you haven't already provided this to your buyer and have documented that. Lead paint, we don't need that. Mold, moisture. And affiliated business arrangement, of course, they're using the best financing and potentially doing a Old Republic home warranty and affiliated business relationship with Priority Home Lending. And we're not going to do the non-refundable fee addendum for this particular video. May talk about that later. And we included the Form W. We're waiving the inspection. Guess they have that in there twice, the buyer's advisory and the seller's market. Now we want the buyer to, so here we're into the documents. These are the documents that the seller, the listing agent, uploaded for your benefit. And the legal is the one that's required. All of the rest are for your benefit and provided. So that's a good sign that you're working with a professional. Preliminary commitment, maybe your buyer has not seen that yet, so you'll include that in this signing. The SPIR form will include that as well. The seller procured inspection report, legal description, 22K, that's the utilities addendum, the seller disclosure. The 22E is included for you. That's the FERPTA, or the foreigner. I like to include it just because a lot of the brokers have that as a part of the agreement. So we'll include that. And also you're letting the buyer know that the seller is warranting that they're not a foreign, they're not a resident alien. Okay, you don't need to include the offer guide and notes, the roof receipt or the furnace receipt or the air scrubber, unless you just want to send those to the buyer. Okay, we'll add all of those and then they'll show up in that order and we may want to go through and adjust it. I like to have the order of my contract in a way that it makes sense, not only for your buyer, but for when you send it over, you send it in the way that you've written it to the listing broker. So here we go. These are all fine alphabetically. 22EF, wire fraud alert. I like to put this up towards the top. And of course, I want to make sure before they sign anything that they've seen the real estate aid law if they haven't yet. We got the advisories. All of this is good. 35W, we'll just move that up under the 35. Preliminary commitment, we can move that down. Seller procured inspection report. Maybe we'll put that above the advisories. That is important to have. Legal description, maybe we can put that down towards the end. 22K, we'll move that up underneath the 22D. Yeah. Okay. Yes, I know my alphabet. And got all that. Seller disclosure, 22E. We'll go ahead and move that up as well. And here we go. All right, so that's all in good shape. Double check to see that's arranged as you want it to be arranged. You can come back to this if you want to change it, but best to have it. Then you move on to the design portion. And here's where it gets fun and detailed. 60 pages, that's because it includes the preliminary title. I actually like to have that sent separately so it's not all combined with the offer. And then once you get the offer back signed from the buyer, you can just have one link to send to the listing agent. That's a personal preference, but I think it's good practice not to clutter things up, make it as simple as possible. You can also later remove some of these items so you're just sending that because you don't need to send the law of real estate agent. Okay, here you've got Joe and you want to make sure that he's received this, so you just put his initial over there. And you can click on the little wheel there and add the date stamp right next to it and then scroll down. You don't need to have him initial all of these pages, just that he's received it. Now by default, the buyer's going to be where he needs to sign. And here's a good time to go through and just make sure you did everything correctly. Looks like you got everything good. Every one of these lines should be checked. All of the addenda in there. All looks well. What some folks are doing is, and I don't necessarily recommend it, is they're striking the information verification period. I'm just going to show you how to do that. So you will go to markup here and click on the line, and then you'll just start up at the top and you'll do a line across, then click out of that, click the line again, and put your artwork in here. Now, since you've made a change, you want to have an initial by that. So you go back to the initial, you'll drag the initial over by that. And I always like to have the date with any initial. And I like to, it's not going to allow me to move it, but that's okay. We'll just leave it where it is. It's in there, and that paragraph now does not apply. Okay, we got this a little out of order. The wiring got back below that. So this is a good example of, okay, we actually want to change that. So we're going to go back, we're going to save and continue, and we're going to move that around. I just don't want to be sloppy with this. So we're going to move this wire alert above the 21. See how I did that for your benefit? And then we'll go back to design. Yes, in leadership, there's a lot of mistakes that I make for the benefit of others. not always intentional. And again, this is an overview. Hopefully this is providing you guidance. This is something maybe last minute you need to put something together and you just want some assurance that you're doing things correctly. So we'll just go with where we left off, and you should see the wiring portion there. Now this is where you're going to put your name in there. And if I would have thought ahead, I would have actually had me in there and been able to pull my name over there, but I didn't. So I'm going to have to go in here and type it up, draw a text box, and put my name and number in there. And you have to click in there. Whoops, we'll delete that one. Clicking in there. Spell my name right. Some spaces. 1, 7, 2, 8. Yes, this is my number. So if you need to spam me, I won't answer. I'll move it down. And you can see by moving, if you're moving this, it moves it around. It actually shrunk the letters a little bit. If you want to change the font, you can change it down here to 16. I think for whatever reason is by default. You can make it bold. You can be bold. And if you want to put the escrow's officer's name, you don't need to, but you can. And then you're going to have a place for Joe to sign down here. And you can either right click or click on the wheel there, and you get the date stamp. You can move it over if you're anal like me. Okay, then moving ahead, you've got all this. We talked about this, and this W should have been saved that we filled out. Yep, there it is. So we don't have to do that over again. We were able to get out and come back in. Then the financing is next, making sure that we have everything we need in here. Yep, conventional, 20% down, all good. Financing, increased down payment. Again, go through and double check to make sure that you got this correct. You don't want to send the signing and then realize you did something wrong or unintended. 22D looks good. FERPTA. Now, I see buyers sign here all the time. It's not necessary. It says only applicable if seller's a non-resident alien. They're not, so it's just for information. And evidence of funds. This is where he put in the stock, so all of that's good. Nothing needs to be changed. Now here we have the form, the document that was filled out by the seller. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to have the date of the purchase and sale agreement. Now what I've seen is, if you pull this date over, it's going to be the date that Joe Schmo signs. So if it, for some reason, it is not today's date, it will be different. So just go ahead and take that little extra effort to put in today's date. And then now you can go back to the drag and drop, and you can put the signer name over here. It just makes it simple. And then you'll, it does know that this is a form, so it does have the initial down at the bottom. Escalation's all good. You can double check that. And the inspection waiver, all good. John L. Scott form. Here we're going to drag the buyer's signature over. And date. And date stamp. All good. Receiving that. Here we want to have them initial. The buyer always initials the legal description. Put the date in there. And buyer advisor in the seller's market. We want to make sure that they're aware of all of the risks. When you click on the drag and drop with the initial without dragging it, it'll pop to the upper left. Be aware of that, because I've seen some contracts where you don't realize that you've done that, and then there's this initial off in the middle of nowhere. Is that just me that's done that? All right. Next one, again, we just drag in and drop in all of these different items, moving them through date stamp. And I hope you're still with me here. I know this is a lot of stuff, and I hope this is helpful, and I hope it's not too dry for you. Okay, and then all of the preliminary title. So you got all of that. Of course, as a professional, you've looked through this to see if there's any potential items. There's usually links in those that you can go and see the different aspects of preliminary title. Another legal description should be exactly the same as the one that they initialed. Old Republic title and all of their information, all of this included. So here's the Form 17 or the seller disclosure. And if you want to have a strong offer, you go ahead and have Joe sign that he's received and pull in that he's waiving the right. If you want a potential out and you think that the offer doesn't need to be so strong, that could be a potential out. All right, that is it for this portion. Then go back and double check everything's there. You click next and it's going to pull it all together, get it ready to sign. You've already contacted your buyers and let them know that you're going to be sending the offer to sign. So once you do that, you send the invitation and that goes off and your buyer has received it and you're done with that portion. Congratulations. That's it for that. And we'll continue with what they receive and going through that portion.